A hurricane is one of those things that we have to contend with. Because of our geographical location, it is virtually unavoidable. But there are things that we can and should do to mitigate the effects of a hurricane. Hi there everyone, welcome to Jamaica Magazine. I am Adrian Atkinson and you're tuned in to the #1 informative program. Today's show is all about a hurricane. What is it exactly? What we may do to reduce loss and more. We have lots in store just for you, so don't move a muscle.
Did you know that all employees are entitled to paid public holidays? Yes, under the Holidays with Pay order, enforced by the Ministry of Labour and Social Security, there are 4 categories of paid benefits: holidays with pay, sick leave with pay, gratuity, and sick leave benefit. And do you want to know who is entitled? Me and any employee except casual workers who have worked at least 110 days per year with the same employer. Also, if you work between 110 and 220 days, you earn 1 day of leave for every 22 days worked. Employees who work more than 220 days in a year are entitled to 2 weeks of vacation leave. And if you've been with the same employer for more than 10 years and have worked over 220 days in the year, you qualify for 3 weeks of vacation leave. So, know your rights and take your rest.
In last week's Get the Facts, we looked at hurricane readiness for crops. In this week's episode, we are assessing what you may do in regard to your livestock at this time. Let's tune in to the conversation.
Welcome to Get the Facts, the show that gives you information on the latest topics. I'm Theodore Henry. In our last episode, we explored how crop farmers can prepare for the hurricane season. And today, we'll be shifting our focus to livestock farmers and similarly explore how they can get ready to weather the storm season. Joining us is Maxine Brown, Senior Livestock Specialist from the Rural Agricultural Development Authority, RADA. Welcome to Get the Facts, Lady Brown.
Thank you for having me, and it's a pleasure to be able to share critical information with our livestock farmers to secure their livelihood.
Well, let's get to sharing some of that critical information. Now, how do you prepare livestock for a storm?
Okay, so the first thing that farmers want to do when they hear that we're having a storm or hurricane, whatever disaster is, impending,
Right.
is that you want to check on your animals, because the animals are your livelihood. So you want to do an assessment of them. You want to make sure they are tagged, because should in case they get loose, you can have information, and also because you'll be documenting information on your animals. You want to know how many vulnerable animals you have, because you may have some younger animals that may need particular attention. You want to see which animals are your prized animals, so you want to make sure you have data on them.
Right.
You also sometimes some persons take pictures of them if they don't have any tags to tag them. There are some temporary markers that you can use to mark them, just in case they may get loose, and also you want to have information on them.
Right.
And if you have your information that is digital, you want to store that information, you want to back it up in the cloud or have extra copies of it. So you just want to make sure that your animals are in the best health before the storm occurs. You also want to have a first aid kit on hand, because what you want to do, you want to make sure that after the hurricane and you're assessing your animals, if you see any cuts, any bruises, etc., you can treat it right away, so that you do not have problems with screwworm or sometimes pneumonia might try to set in. So you want to have the medication for the animals. You have some animals that may be on medication. You want to get extra. So some animals, you may have had the vet had assessed them and they're on antibiotics. So you may want to get extra antibiotics, because you don't know what will happen after a storm.
Blocked, this could
Exactly.
happen,
So,
you have the stuff on
so
hand.
a first aid kit is critical for every farmer to make sure that your animals can bounce back as quickly as possible. So after you have assessed your animals and you have done the necessary documentation of your animals, you also now want to check the infrastructure, because you want to make sure that their housing, their accommodation is also sturdy enough to withstand the storm.
But what happens? Sorry, let me jump in here. What happens if, for example, you're in a sort of lower place? You know, should you make plans to evacuate at the time if you see flooding, or should you just get them out even before the storm?
So that is critical. You try to get them out before the flooding, because remember, if a flooding is occurring, you don't want to be out there as well at that time.
Yeah.
So that is why you have to have a plan for your farm in terms of your evacuation plan. So for animals that you use to tie in low-lying areas, some persons used to love tie their animals near to rivers, etc.
Right.
You want to move them to a higher elevation. For animals that you have in structure, you want to check the structure. So for your poultry farmers, you want to make sure that there are no loose zinc. You want to make sure that you have enough tarpaulin to really to secure to cover the mesh,
Right,
because
and wind going to be blowing.
exactly, wind and rain will be blowing in. For the small ruminant farmers like your sheep and goat farmers, you also want to check your structures, because you don't want zinc flying and probably cutting the animals, etc. So you want to secure your infrastructure. Persons can use hurricane straps now to secure the roof as best as possible. I see some persons, and because they were late in the game in terms of security, they may have to be using building blocks.
Yeah, on the
top
tops,
of the
right.
roof, just like
Which
what they
is
do
a
in their
hazard.
house. Exactly, because it too can, blow off and cause problems. So you want to secure your facility. You also want to store extra feed and extra water for your animals.
Right.
Because you do not know when you'll be getting access to water if there's anything that is happening. So you have your tank, make sure you store water, make sure you store extra feed, but take precaution to secure the feed, because you don't want the feed to get wet.
Right.
If it get wet, it can get moldy, and it can cause problems with your animals as well. And you want to secure it from rodents. So make sure that it's secured properly. If you have your generator, make sure your generator is up and running, because
service.
exactly, you want to make sure that you can still continue production after the hurricane. You also want to make sure that the animals, whatever implements you have that you use to work with them, your husbandry, the tools that you use for your husbandry practices, like your hoof trimmers, etc. Your milking cans for dairy farmers, you want to take those out and to secure them elsewhere.
I need to ask something right here, though. You mentioned ruminants, you mentioned birds. Are there any animals that are particularly vulnerable during a storm?
So the animals that are really vulnerable are especially poultry, because you really cannot move them from their location.
Yeah.
We have the tunnel house operators, and their structure is fairly sturdy. And so for the other operators, the other backyard operators, which is why I was indicating you have to use your hurricane straps, use your tarps to prevent things from blowing in. I know sometimes we have the very small farmers who sometimes will take up their chickens, and you'll see stories how they spread newspaper in the bathroom, and that is where they carry them.
Right.
Because sometimes they have the day-old chicks as well, or probably chicks that are just 2 weeks old. And the quantities that they have is sufficient for them to can store it in a room, or, like I said, they said sometimes even in the bathroom they carry it to secure it. Because remember, after the hurricane, this is what is going to help you to bounce back. That is your livelihood.
Right.
So these animals are especially vulnerable. Other vulnerable animals may include like animals that are pregnant, and for the very young animals. And so, which is why it's critical to say, even after the hurricane, you have to be monitoring these animals, because sometimes the impact is not seen immediately. It's not that they are drowned or probably they got any large laceration, any big cuts that you couldn't treat. It may be now pneumonia that is starting to set in. We have what they call hoof rot, because if they're standing in water for too long, then it gets soft, then they start to have foot issues. So these are some of the things that we have to pay attention to. So the pregnant animals, the younger animals, and even sometimes your older animals too. They're basically almost like people, We'll say these are the vulnerable.
Got it. We've gotten so much interesting information. We're going to take a break right now, and the discussion will continue with Maxine Brown, Senior Livestock Specialist from the Rural Agricultural Development Authority, RADA.
Your devices are important, and so is charging them safely.
Never charge your phones or your laptop in bed, or leave them charging on your sofa or on any material that is flammable. That is a risk that is too great for you to take on.
Instead, charge your devices on a hard surface and always unplug them once fully charged.
Welcome back. We're continuing our conversation on livestock farmers and how they can protect their farm during a hurricane, as well as things they should be doing now since we are in the hurricane season. The discussion continues with Maxine Brown, Senior Livestock Specialist from the Rural Agricultural Development Authority, RADA. Lady Brown, we're looking at the space in which the animals are, looking at the housing, making sure you have things before and after,
Exactly.
you have extras. And it strikes me, as it is with agriculture, crops, that what you do at the pre-preparation phase, even where you even decide to build your thing, because the hurricane season comes every year,
Exactly.
matters. But tell me a little bit about RADA now. How does RADA help throughout the hurricane season?
Okay, so RADA is very important to the farmers because number one, we provide technical information. So we give you the information in terms of how to properly secure your animals. So as soon as we know that we're entering the hurricane season, we start to remind farmers. We start to put information on our Facebook page or Instagram, do interviews similar to this. We have WhatsApp groups in which the officers are reminding farmers. And we also...
Based on different areas?
Exactly.
Okay.
And we have also training sessions that we do with farmers because you have to do the theory session, but you also have to do the practicals to show them some of the things that need to be done. So we do a lot of sensitization and reminding of the farmers and to help them to navigate. You know, we can help you to say, well, where it is that you have your farm, what it is that you need to do. If it is that you need to tag your animals, we can show you how to tag your animals, the practical part of it, to show you how to tag your animals so that you can be documenting information. We also, through the ministry, get some amount of funding, and through the other stakeholders as well, to be able to support some farmers, because we know sometimes, even with the best of intention and they know what to do, sometimes it's really just difficult for them to be able to do the right things. So we have programs where we try to assist farmers with, you know, like lumber and zinc and nails to secure their housing. We have also provided shaft machines to cut up grass so that they can make what we call silage for goat and sheep farmers. And this is so that after the hurricane, they'll be able to still have access to feed for their animals. Where it is possible, we teach farmers also how to make hay. Because hay is just dried grass and you compress it and they can have that for even much longer. Exactly. Hay as well. We also provide for our poultry farmers, we provide defeathering machines to make their production more efficient so that they're minimizing losses. We also provide watering equipment. So like for the goats, again, we provide water bowls so you can minimize the amount of water you're using because you don't want to have any wastage.
And
Again,
this is pretty important in a hurricane when your normal water flow might be interrupted.
For the broiler farmers, we also assist them with materials to strengthen their housing, any other small implements that they will need, so like the waterers and the feeders, so that they can minimize losses again in terms of wastage of feed and water, because everything is going to be so important and everything is also playing into the cost of your production. So those are some of the things that we do before. We have programs that we try to assist farmers in being able to secure their livelihoods. And we also do a lot of sensitization, trainings, reminders.
Site visits?
Site visits, and which is why I said the practical things to say, well, to help them to tag their animals. So yes, we do the site visits. You can say, what are some of the things that you need to do? Do you need to build a drain? Because where you have your farm, you know, you can have flooding. We advise persons, like you say, to do elevated goat housing, not so much the flat structures because they are easy to be flooded. You know, so
you mentioned hoof rats standing in the water throughout the duration of the storm. Okay, so all of that pre-preparation throughout the season, you can get that support. But a storm has struck. A storm has struck. There is damage. There is devastation. Is there anything specific RADA might do to help with recovery? Okay.
So what we do first of all is to, and the farmers also have a role to play, is to contact RADA as soon as possible to document the damage that you have suffered or what loss you have suffered. Take pictures of your animals, etc.
Right.
Because remember too, we try to get out in the communities as quickly as possible to do our assessment, but sometimes you may have roads that are blocked, that we can't get to the community as well, or flooding that have taken place. But what we try to do is do a quick assessment of the losses, because now we have to document how much is it going to cost us to be able to can help the farmers to recover.
I see.
So that is a rapid assessment that is done until we can go fully into communities and do a more detailed assessment. And that is the information that the ministry actually use to try to lobby with external stakeholders or to look at whatever resources they have to see how they're going to be spreading the resources, like you said, which category of animals or which crops may need, that support, and which parish seem to have suffered the most damage.
Yeah, we
to be
usually
able
get that stuff.
exactly.
So
to
it's a
do all of that.
partnership.
Exactly.
The farmer has to report. RADA gets that report to work with the ministry. Interesting. You've given us a lot to chew on, and I want you to help somebody who is watching here now. Direct them to where they can get more information.
Okay, so in every parish we have a RADA office, so they can call 1-888-ASK-RADA.
Right.
As well as they can check our Instagram page or Facebook page, and the RADA officers are present in every parish, as a matter of fact, which is why I'm wearing the shirt RADA Connect, because it's a new initiative by our CEO, Mr. Garnet Edmondson, to really get into some of the deep rural areas where sometimes you hear a person say, boy, you have to climb hill and go down gully and go through to really to see that, to encourage farmers to register, because when you are registered, that is how we're able to plan for you.
Right.
So these are some of the ways that they can contact RADA, and because the initiative has just started, and so we're going more and more out in the parishes, and we're digitizing information as well. We have created an app where farmers can request a visit to their farm as well.
Nice.
And there's more to come.
There's more to come.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much for all of that. It's all the time that we have for today. With us has been Maxine Brown, Senior Livestock Specialist from the Rural Agricultural Development Authority, RADA. Thank you for joining us, and thanks to you, our viewers, for tuning in.
In the event of an earthquake, it's important to know how to protect yourself no matter where you are. Whether you're driving or using a wheelchair, being prepared can make all the difference.
If you're driving, you don't go driving under your overpass, you don't go driving over a bridge, because those can be interrupted, especially if you're having a major event. Persons using wheelchair, you lock those in place. You normally lock the wheels in place, and you do the similar crouching to try to protect the most vital part of your body, which is your head.
Remember, safety is always a priority. Be prepared, stay informed, and protect yourself in times of need.
Certainly, around this time of the year, we always hear about hurricanes. But what exactly is that? Come with me and let's explore this natural weather phenomenon.
The hurricane season in Jamaica begins on June 1st and culminates at the end of November. It means that a powerful storm can occur during this period, so strong that it can cause extensive damage due to high winds, heavy rainfall, and storm surges. That is exactly what a hurricane is capable of. But what exactly is a hurricane? Understanding this can help one prepare for and respond to these powerful storms effectively.
A hurricane is the most extreme stage of a rotating storm that occurs in our region. When I speak about our region, we're talking about the North Atlantic Ocean, the Gulf of Mexico, the Caribbean Sea. And within these areas, sometimes you have clusters of showers and thunderstorms that develop based on many features. And in those areas, all of them being low pressure areas, they cause clouds to rise. And cloud developing and rising leads to more intense thunderstorm activity usually. And when we have that cluster of thunderstorms, it could be the beginning of what could become a hurricane. So for example, you have a cluster of clouds basically that may have showers and usually have some thunderstorm activity in there. But when you have many of them developing or they get so intense, we might refer to an area of disturbed weather that's over the region. And that would continue to move, but with the rotation of the earth and the forces that act on the surface of the earth, it becomes a somewhat rotating system. So these clouds begin rotating around each other. And so you see the movement basically in that general direction because it's anti-clockwise. Now generally as this thing develops, it gets much more intense with lots more clouds around it developing, but then you could also experience a center being clearly defined that doesn't actually have the clouds, but in that center, everything moves around the center, and in the center is really a calm area. So we talk about the center of the tropical cyclone or the eye of the hurricane, and that would actually be in the middle, sometimes very clearly defined, sometimes it's covered by some clouds in the upper atmosphere, but really when you get to the surface, it is clear. So that's what happens in the center where you have the eye. And then outside of that, these clusters of clouds with the rotation going around anti-clockwise, you also see some bands of clouds that are coming in to the center. So these are clouds coming in, but they generally form in this general pattern where they come in toward the western side of the center, and then they also extend like that from the southern side, southern and eastern side. So we end up with a pattern that looks like this.
So this is the symbol that meteorologists look for on satellite imagery. And once that happens, they say that the hurricane is well defined. Hurricanes are classified into categories based on wind speed, using the Saffir-Simpson Hurricane Wind Scale. At its lowest stage, a Category 1 hurricane has sustained wind speeds of at least 74 miles or 119 kilometers per hour. Category 2 sustained wind speeds between 96 and 110 miles per hour. While some devastation may happen in a Category 1 or 2 hurricane, at Category 3 and beyond, wind speed is greater, and so too is the calamity that can occur.
In this case now, you expect some greater devastating effects. So it's more not just extensive damage, but you expect some devastating impact from the system. You have more trees now being toppled. This is when we refer to it as a major hurricane. Major hurricanes are categories 3, 4, or 5.
Of course, during major hurricanes, large trees may be uprooted, more roofs may get lifted, and power lines are likely to go down, possibly for weeks. It is important to note that wind speed is not the only thing to characterize a hurricane. Heavy rainfall too is expected.
You expect more torrential rainfall usually, especially as you move closer and closer to the center of the system. And you also will experience some storm surge flooding, which occurs really along coastal areas where the wind actually moves the waves of the sea onto the land, and that causes destruction as well. The greatest preparation that we can make for hurricanes is really mental. We have to prepare our minds to recognize that we are in a vulnerable place. Where Jamaica is located is always vulnerable, and so hurricanes can occur at any time during the hurricane season.
There are, of course, physical things that must be put in place to minimize how much you are inconvenienced if a hurricane does occur. These include getting non-perishable food, storing water in case resources become inadequate, and seeing about the exterior of your home, reinforcing windows and walls, and checking for anything that can serve as missiles during heavy winds from the hurricane. You want to do all that you can to achieve a reasonable amount of comfort during and after a hurricane. And of course, if you live in an area where your home construction is insecure, you need to identify and make arrangements with emergency shelters near your home, and continue to monitor local news and weather reports for updates.
One of the things that people tend to rely on is that old rhyme that people talk about, June too soon, October all over. Those two come immediately to mind because they are really myths. So the myth about June being too soon is one of them that we really tried to pull people away from, because June is never too soon to prepare for the hurricane season. In fact, the Hurricane Beryl actually began developing in June and moved very close to Jamaica in June. It was on the 1st of July that it started moving into the Caribbean and then impacted us on the 3rd. So June is not too soon for our preparations.
Also, the hurricane season goes until the end of November, and there have been cases where we've had tropical cyclones beyond this period. So it's imperative that we maintain our alertness. Another myth pertains to Hurricane Gilbert, which struck the island in September of 1988. Many Jamaicans are of the view that the hurricane struck Jamaica twice, with many insinuating that it circled the island immediately after it passed. This is so commonly believed that there's even a popular song commemorating the event that echoes those sentiments.
Say, for instance, Jamaica is here, and the eye is moving in this general direction, like Gilbert moved from the east to the west. Initially, the winds, because they are moving in this general direction, anti-clockwise, the winds will be coming from the north because they are rotating around the center. But when the center gets to the other side, meaning that the center has already passed and moved to the west, then the winds now, continuing to move anti-clockwise, are coming from the south. So initially they were coming from the north, but then after the eye passes, the winds now come from the south.
So no, Hurricane Gilbert did not hit Jamaica twice, and thankfully so, because we can all agree that a hurricane passing once is enough. No matter the category, hurricanes can have catastrophic effects. It helps when we are prepared.
Our oceans are coming under environmental threats. There are 3 major environmental threats. They call it the triple planetary crisis, and there's no area of the world that is immune to these challenges. Challenge 1 is climate change. Challenge 2 is biodiversity loss. Challenge 3 is pollution. Climate change is the warming of our atmosphere. It is the changing of our weather patterns. We know that it's because of carbon dioxide and carbon monoxide being released into the environment at a rate that the environment can't absorb it. What that's causing is warming of our oceans at a rate which is frightening. It doesn't allow the organisms that live in your ocean to adapt as fast as they need to. That's one of the things that's affecting biodiversity loss in the oceans. If people use unsustainable fishing practices, then you take more fish than you need. You don't allow the oceans to replenish itself and to be as healthy as it can. So when you have people that use nets that are too small or fish out baby parrotfish, they are committing a crime in some cases, but they're actually harming the ocean that you own a part of. The third issue, which we have the capacity to deal with, is the pollution issue. To generate ocean wealth, we need to have ocean health.
We've come to the end of today's show. To catch a repeat of this or any other, feel free to log on to our website at gis.gov.jm. Until next time, I'm Adrian Atkinson. Walk good.
This has been a production of the Jamaica Information Service, the voice of Jamaica.